Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Flora, speaking out as usual. This past few days, particularly with Congress trying to decide if they will send more money to ICE, the Department of Homeland Security, I've been thinking a lot about a man who had a great deal of influence on my life. I'm sorry I never met him. He died about 20 years before I was born. Wish I had met him. He was my great-grandfather. He was one of the group of young men back in 1857 who left their homes and their businesses back near the East Coast and immigrated to the Kansas Territory. They were full of anger and great purpose. Let me back up a bit and describe what motivated them with such power. In 1850, 7 years before they left home, the Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, in which it was made the law that escaped slaves, even if they were living in free states or had reached a free state, could be captured and returned by their owners or their owners' agents who received bonuses, big bonuses. Profiling, of course, anybody with black skin. No trials once they were captured, no redress. And citizens in the free states and officials in the free towns and states were forced to assist in the capture. If they refused, or if they were found guilty, if they use that word, of sheltering an escaped slave or giving them food, let alone helping them escape, they would be put in prison for 6 months or given a $1,000 fine, or both. And $1,000 back then was probably about, I'm guessing, the average middle-class family's yearly income. Okay, that aroused great anger in the country, the free states anyway, as you can imagine. And 7 years later, when this law was appealed by a black slave named Dred Scott, because he'd lived in a free state for some years, he was appealing to the Supreme Court to announce that he's a free man. Well, that Supreme Court voted 7-2 that not only was he not a free man, no matter how long he lived in a free state, unless his owner actually freed him, he not only was still a slave, but they went further, that no African could ever be a citizen of America. They went further. The Supreme Court Chief Justice, and I'm quoting him exactly, said those of African descent are beings of an inferior order with no rights which a white man is bound to respect. Oh, that was how they would have approved of the recent social media clip issued from the White House, portraying President and Mrs. Obama with heads of apes. That was taken down within 12 hours, but no apologies been issued. The Supreme Court Justice would have delighted in that clip. 5 of those judges, by the way, were themselves slave owners. And President Buchanan, a weak man, though he personally said he disapproved of slavery, he backed the court. It was at this time the Republican Party began to rise with power as the anti-slave political group. Very interesting point, isn't it? And it was that year, 1857, of that infamous Supreme Court Act that our young men, including my great-grandfather, went up the Missouri River and landed in the Kansas Territory to help vote keep it a free state when it became a state. He made immediate steps to help with the Underground Railway, which of course had nothing to do with trains. It was that organization that helped slaves escape from their slavehood and sent north into Canada, which of course didn't allow slavery. His own little home and his homestead and the little store that he opened were wayside stations for escaping slaves. They were told to go north, follow the North Star, and if they weren't able to find the North Star, it was pointed out to them the Great Dipper constellation, which pointed to the North Star, which looked like water or drinking gourd. Do you remember, some of you were old enough, the Weavers' beautiful song, "Follow the drinking gourd, follow the drinking gourd, keep going north." At one point when he had to go into slave territory to help the slaves get over the Missouri River. At one point, a couple of slaves he was helping escape sat down, exhausted and despairing, and said they could go no further. But he forced them to their feet and said, "You have to keep going. We are being tracked. If they catch up with us, I will be shot on the spot, and you will be taken back to cruel punishment and hopeless slavery for the rest of your life." So he got them over the river. 3 years later, he went briefly back east, married the girl back home, who was a young school teacher, brought her out to Kansas. I still have some of her old wedding gift teaspoons. I love to look at them and use them. Made of the old original coin, silver. Anyway, I wonder how she felt about it. Kansas, she stood by him, helped him with the escaping slaves, but Kansas was still pretty much of a wilderness in those days and still quite dangerous. It was still called Bloody Kansas, with slave owners and their agents coming across the river, forcing slaves back, shooting, killing if they need be. Even several years later, 1863, Quantrill, a fanatical slave owner with 450 men, attacked the town of Lawrence, Kansas, and shot to death 200 civilian men and boys, some of them boys only in their teens. Shot them dead. I wonder what this young couple would say to us now if they could be here with us today. According to this, I don't think I mentioned, I've found my great-grandfather's autobiography written in longhand in an old black tin bread box, Family Records. He wrote it all out, not feeling he was a hero, that this was just the sort of thing a decent person would do. I think they would look at us now and say, in so many ways, you are going through the same situation. Men with bonuses flooding your streets, dragging people out of homes, churches, courts, businesses, sending them off to detention camps, maybe out of the country to cruel jails in foreign countries. They would say, we too were forced to assist as free citizens into these captures. With us, it would have been 6 months in prison or a big fine, a year's income. With you, you have your border czar Homan saying just a few weeks ago, zero tolerance for those who obstruct work of federal agents. If necessary, he didn't say this, but his agents took him literally, and already there have been deaths among the citizens. This young couple would have said, we, like you, believe in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And for that, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. They would say to us, keep up your protests. Keep it up, flood the streets, lift your voices, while there's still time before things go beyond mending. Perhaps they would have quoted that wonderful poem by the great Quaker poet Whittier, John Greenleaf Whittier, who wrote a particular verses called The Kansas Immigrants. I'll read a couple of verses from it. We crossed the prairie as of old, the pilgrims crossed the sea, to make the West as they the East, the homestead of the free. Upbearing like the ark of old, the Bible in our van, we go to test the truth of God against the lies of man. We're flowing from our native hills as our free rivers flow. The blessing of our motherland is on us as we go. This young couple would have said, you too are crossing a river, a line, either that or turning back to submission. And you too are following that star, the vision of America, held in your hearts, proclaimed in your streets, as the home of the brave, land of the free, home of the brave. We are one with you in heart, they would have said 180 years ago. Thank you for being with me today.